Thanks very much, Moses. And I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk to a group like this on a species that's been very good for me. I've seen over 30,000 in my time. Many of them were when I was doing moose surveys, and just 10 last weekend. But they are an icon of the boreal forest, and they are in some real difficulty today. And so I want to just give you a little bit of insight from a more extensive PowerPoint that I've given from the West Coast to the East Coast. And you know, I put this picture of my boot on here because I've gathered a lot of this traditional knowledge based on traveling with those boots in the bush and canoe and boats and things like that. But where did moose come from? I had the good fortune with my wife, who is sitting here, to be in Yakutsk in eastern Siberia in 2008, and this is where moose evolved from, whoops-a-daisy, right up in this area right here, and some of them went west and some of them went east and crossed the Bering Land Bridge, which is about a 1,500-mile wide isthmus that connected North America to Asia. And once they got over here, then as the big ice sheets parted, moose moved down this. We have the Laurentide, or the Cordilleran to the west and the Laurentide to the east, and as the moose, or the ice sheets parted, they stratified themselves out on the southern part of the great ice sheets. And this is a photograph from the late Randolph Peterson's book, but when they were down here, we've got they stayed down in this neck of the woods. They went up in this neck of the woods here into Manitoba, Saskatchewan, into northern Ontario, and into the east coast. And now we have 4 subspecies in North America. We got the Alaska Yukon, the Shiras moose in southern Alberta, BC, the Western Canada moose, and the Eastern Canada moose. And there's some very interesting things about these guys. They've got this hump, and I'll explain to you in a minute what's the significance of that. They got this funny looking thing here underneath the throat with a bell with a rope portion. These things are called antlers. And I don't want anybody here tell me that they're horns. They're not horns, they're antlers. Okay, horns are shed on an annual basis, or antlers are shed on an annual basis, pardon me. And they've got this dark nose here, which is characteristic of bulls during the rutting period. And I want you to pay attention to the inside edge of the main palm, which is parallel to the long axis of the nose. You'll notice on this slide here, the inside edge of the palm is uplifted about a 40-degree angle to the long axis of the nose. I took this photograph downriver, Chapleau, northern Ontario, where I come from. And you know, in the summertime, this bull has just a light-colored nose, and that changes to a dark color about August 20th as testosterone levels build up for the ensuing rut. Cows have a light-colored nose year-round, not as robust a bell as the bulls do. And this is the vertebrae right where that hump is. The long process on the top of the vertebrae, that's where those ligaments attached to that hold that big head up. And when we're flying surveys in the wintertime, if you can, they've got no antlers and you can't see the face. How do you tell if it's a bull or a cow? Well, you got to look at the south end when it's heading north. And this is what we call the vulva patch right here. All the cows have that white vulva patch. Coloration varies. There's a white cow here with 2 dark twins, another cow with a dark one. This animals here were photograph was taken by a friend of mine halfway between Chapleau and Timmins near the Groundhog River, and they've been there since I ran that country with my dad many years ago as a biologist. Now, antlers have been fascinating to me over the many years, and this is what we call a split or a butterfly type antler between the main palm, brow palm, and this is a full palm where you have no indentation between the brow palm and the main palm. And you can't, I mean, I look at these and I can tell you that's a 1.5 years old and that's a 2.5-year-old, but you can't really tell age by, you know, when they get above this by looking at the antlers. And as This is a mature bull here, and then as animals get older, the spread may still be there, but the mass is not as robust as it was earlier on. And then we get some atypical ones. This one is down here, very atypical. This guy right here, I happen to have those at home, and that's from a castrated bull. And once he becomes castrated accidentally or via disease, he sheds the regular set of antlers and he grows something like this, and they are never shed again. What happens when they shed antlers right at the growing point between the antler and the skull? Bone-destroying cells invade this area right here, and the only part in this animal that was still attached was right in the center. I just happened to hit that antler with my hand, and it popped off. And the antlers start growing about the first part of April, and this was a photograph I took on April the 6th, and I saw this same guy on the 19th, and he had about 10 inches. It's one of the fastest growing tissues that we know of. And this is what they look like when it's all the growth, the summer growth is finished, and they got lots of body mass, and the antlers are all primed and ready to go. And this is a bull that is just in the process of shedding shedding the velvet. And they eat that stuff. Any stuff that they don't eat that I've been able to find in the bush, it's where they dropped on the ground, and he hasn't been able to see that. And you can see on the back of the antler here the bloodlines that bring all this nutritional growth to the antlers. And this is what they look like at the end of the velvet shedding period. And this is how we tell the age of these animals here. That we grind them between two grindstones and count the rings on them just like you do the rings on a tree. A dark line, we usually count the dark lines, it's easier to see. The dark line is winter growth period, and the light translucent line. And you can see as they get older, the center part here fills in with cementum. Now, somebody told me Moses would get his attention. We started talking sex here, so I'm going to got your attention, haven't I? This young fella is going to just engage in making the wallow. And it is absolutely fascinating to watch these things. He'll start to make the wallow with his front feet, and he'll try and urinate. And he can't do it. And it is unbelievable. They urinate on the 7th time. Absolutely phenomenal. And once he's urinated, then he'll stand back and he'll splash his feet in it and go like this with his head to get the urine on that bell and on the underneath side of his antlers. And I have actually watched cows come over and give the big boy a lifter in the you-know-where when he's urinating, almost buckles the old boy's legs. And to get that urine, bull moose urine at this time of the year is a very pungent odor, and it really turns the cows on. And 2 years ago, I had my granddaughter with me early one morning, and we saw a big bull alongside the road, and he started going up in the hill. I said, "Sweetie, watch this. It's something not very many people are going to see." And he made this wallow, and the cow came over and gave him a lifter, and she laid down in it and rubbed herself in it, and they were happy and everything. And so I got her, she went up to it, and she says, "Grampy, this stinks." So we get back to the truck and that, and she calls her grandmother on the truck phone. You know, "Hey, Grandma, guess what? We just saw." She said, "Grampy gets so excited when he sees this." And, you know, bull moose, they don't have any teeth on the front at all, but what they have on the top of the front here is top of the jaw is two little wee organs there. And what this bull is doing, and you've probably seen it on cattle, he's sniffing at the rear end of the cow to take in those odors to see if she is receptive. And once she is receptive, then breeding will take place. And of course, sometimes you'll have two bulls of the same social rank, and the end result of this sometime is animals that have locked antlers and end up dying. I've looked at a lot of reproductive tracts, probably more than most people in North America have, and the average breeding date is about the last 3 days of September. And the latest I've had one breed is November 21st, and I have him in a vial at home. He's the size of my thumb. The earliest date was August the 21st. And friends of mine in Alaska took this and sent them to me as a cow in the backyard giving birth in the city of Anchorage. And it's quite phenomenal that they can get to see this in their backyard. And, you know, sometimes they'll have one, sometimes two. Somebody sent me this photograph from the Boundary Waters Canoe area in northern Minnesota, and she had 4. She was a real good mom. She still had those 4 calves with her in the middle of September. Now, I'm going to give you a simple little model. I like to follow that old acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And we're going to have a, whoops-a-daisy, I'll go back here. We're going to have a cow with twins on the landscape, and we got a bull out here to do the breeding. There's no mortality. The cow produces a single calf. The spring she turns 3, twins the spring she turns 5, and we're going to 50-50 sex ratio, and we're going to run it for 7 years. And at the end of 7 years, we got 41 moose on the landscape. In the real world, we'd have, what, maybe 25 or something like that? But let's go back to this again and have the, Vince Crichton goes out and shoots the cow moose. The bull calf dies. We still have a bull out here to do the breeding. And at the end of 7 years, we have 11 moose in the landscape. So in actual fact, we might have, what, maybe 2, 3? That's why when populations go down, we can't be shooting cow moose by anybody. And now, recruitment is the number of those calves that survive to 1 year of age and enter the adult population. So if we have recruitment equals mortality, we got a level population. If recruitment exceeds mortality, it's going up, and the converse if they're going down. Now, this is what a moose population looks like. And, you know, we got a lot of calves out there, and we have a lot of more juveniles and the most productive ones here. And this was some real data from years ago when I was a biologist. Basically, you're looking at the same thing. Now, talk sex here. You remember, Moses, when you caught those little girls when you were 13, 14 years old, you're scratching your head and you didn't know what to do with them. Okay? Well, look at, a friend of mine presented this paper in Alaska a few years ago. This is the sperm, whoops-a-daisy, I keep hitting the wrong one here. There we are. This is the sperm from a mature bull moose. These rest here are mature sperm from immatures. Look at the anomalies there. So the sperm can't swim properly in those seminal fluids, and that's why we've got to make sure we've got enough mature bulls out there to do the breeding during the breeding season. Now, I just arbitrarily put these lines on here. When populations go down, everybody above these lines is gone out of the population. The mature bulls are gone, the mature cows are gone that are producing twins, and we got a real problem. And the same with this, some real data here, the same thing here. Now, a couple of diseases that are important. One is the winter tick. This is not the wood tick. This is the winter tick. How many? 1 year we counted them on the calves born in the spring of the year. In December, we found 56,000 ticks on calves of the year, 39,000 on cows, and 29,000 on bulls. And accidents, you know, like with vehicles, likely hurt during the breeding season, railroad accidents. This is a really interesting one, some traditional knowledge I've been able to find. Once they cast one antler and the other's there, it's such an irritant, they go up to a tree and bang it, part of the skull comes off with it. And that's how infection gets into the skull. Brainworm, you've probably all heard of brainworm that's carried in white-tailed deer, doesn't affect them at all, but when it gets in moose, we've got a male worm here and a female worm here. 100% of the deer in the city of Winnipeg are infected with this thing. And, you know, winter weather, you know, they look at mother here, she's okay, but look at the little guy, he's belly into it. Wolves have a major impact. Black bears eat a lot of calves this time of the year, right now. They're really going after these guys. Vegetation, red osier dogwood, aquatic plants, and balsam fir. They go into the mineral licks here. We're talking to some people this morning. They use these during the month of June. And forest fire, you know, forest fire destroy a lot of trees. So after that, we have a whole new suite of wildlife species that come that take advantage of this. Blowdowns, light gets into the ground, and you get new growth coming up. And in Manitoba, we went and we got the forest industry to do some clean logging. The only thing that they take out of here is the trees that they need and leave the other wildlife trees on the landscape. We've also gone in Manitoba, where I implemented this a few years ago before I retired, ripping up roads. Some of these roads, the good Lord himself couldn't drive down them when we ripped them for a mile. Now, this is what's happened to some of the moose populations in Manitoba and the Duck Mountain, for example. You can see from 1993 to 2010, we're down about 1,300. Well, in 2012, we were down around 1,100. And, better than a 60% decrease. And one of the things that I put in place in Manitoba before I retired, because of that, in a number of areas, we put in conservation closures. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can hunt in these areas. And they're still in place today, and they put more in place. Now, I'm bigger than you. I have a set of antlers here that puts me in the upper echelon of the moose world. And it's fascinating to study behavior. I've only had one bad accident where I got the living dickens beat out of me, and a cow gave me a good licking one day, and I was lucky she didn't catch me in the head. And so, this is what, just some general photographs here. I was testing these little guys over here to see how they'd react to that thing. And, this is what's troubling Canada's moose population: predation, diseases, incidental mortality, licensed hunting, unregulated hunting by our First Nation peoples. We have to bring some kudos. Remember that since Moose walked across the Bering Land Bridge, he hasn't changed. He's still got antlers, 4 feet, and fur. But look at us: cars, trucks, snow machines, Argos, and those things called roads. What chance does he have? And we've got to have adequate funding, easier accesses, more roads, climate change. We can talk about that later. We have to scientifically base management plans, and we've got to put science before politics. And what we need is a workable, proactive conservation strategies with enforceable legislation. We need partnerships between government, First Nation peoples, other Aboriginals, between the general public, organizations, and the cost of doing nothing is monumental. We need a team approach. And, will you people get involved with me? I hope so. And the future of wildlife is ours to predict. I need more people to get in this canoe with me. It's a cookie jar, but that's what it's all about. All getting in the same canoe so we have a legacy to pass on to Julia. And this is really interesting. When I was invited to Russia in 2000, and a number of years back, I guess my reputation preceded me, and when I got off the aircraft at Yaksha, the principal of the local school was there with his children. They presented me with a little poster that showed what children do with the moon and the stars and the forest and all those sort of things. But this is what was on the bottom of it: when the moose were doing fine, the people were doing fine. And I've never forgot that. And this must be our legacy to pass on. Will you help me? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Vince. A very powerful statement. So I want to ask you, how big is this creature?
I've weighed some of them at 1,600 pounds.
1,600 pounds. And it's not just a folktale. When these things come crashing into your car, you die, right?
In some cases you do die, and in some cases you got to get a new car.
So I got a hold of a record that I think you put together. Is it your record? I got a CD of moose calls.
That's mine. That's moose music, and that ain't me singing, okay, or calling.
Okay, so I went through it and tried to relate what I heard to the size of this creature and the frightening nature of this creature as it comes towards you. Can you play that little bit of audio? Doesn't that remind you?
It's fascinating.
I couldn't help but think of Julia Enders and Gut. I mean, doesn't that sound like the world's most constipated person? Thanks so much, Vince.
Good to have you.